The sound in the hall wasn't the murmuring crowd or the distant storm. It was my own frantic heartbeat, a trapped bird beating against my ribs. I stood alone on the cold obsidian floor, a spectacle in a gown that felt like a funeral shroud. 500 wolves watched from the stone tiers, their collective scent, arrogance, wine, leather, suffocating. But my own fear was louder. The scent of wild honey and burnt jasmine filled my nose, the mark of a bloodline everyone pretended had died out. My wolf was a silent, shivering thing deep inside me. She knew. There was no escape from this. On the distant dais he stood, King Alden. The sun seemed to live in his golden hair and polished armor. He did not look at me. He hadn't looked at me since the fated bond, that cruel mistake of the moon goddess, had tied a king to a runt 3 months ago. Beside him was Lady Elara, perfect, highborn. Her scent of winter roses and clean snow was a physical slap. She was everything I, Elara of the Forgotten Vale, was not. He finally moved, reaching for her hand. A low, eager murmur swept the room. My wolf let out a whimper that shook my bones. Elara of the Forgotten Vale. His voice was a cold blade, and he still did not turn his head. You stand before this court as a fated mate, a bond I did not choose, a mistake made when the goddess thought a runt could stand beside a king. The soft, cruel laughter that followed was its own kind of violence. I dug my nails into my palms until I felt wetness, using the sharp pain to stay upright. Behind the king, I saw his 3 pillars, his generals. To the left was Kael, the Tactician, a man of glacial ice and cold steel, his eyes scanning the battlefield like a battlefield. To the right was Torin, the Berserker, a mountain of a man whose molten gold eyes burned with a restless fury. And between them, almost a shadow, was Silas, the Phantom. His gaze was unsettling, and when it flicked to mine for a second, my wolf flinched away. King Alden stepped forward. The frayed thread of our bond pulled taut, and I gasped. I, Alpha Alden, sovereign of the Silver Peaks and king of the Northern Reach. He let the silence build, a predator savoring the moment. I reject you, the runt of the Forgotten Vale, as my mate. It did not break. It exploded. The pain was the end of the world. It was my soul being torn in two. I didn't fall. The world fell away from me. The crack of my knees on stone was distant. The taste of blood in my mouth was familiar. This was the death a rejection was supposed to bring. My heart stuttered. My lungs collapsed. This was it. But from the center of that devouring emptiness, from the very core of my being, something fought back. It was a silver fury, not 1 thread, but 3. They lashed out from my chest like captured lightning, jagged and desperate, seeking an anchor in the void. Vision returned, blurry. I was on my hands and knees in the rain-slicked courtyard. I lifted my head. General Kael had stumbled back, his hand pressed to his chest, his icy composure shattered into pure shock. Torin was on one knee, his black claws digging into the stone as he stared at me like I held his heart in my hand. Silas hadn't moved, but his eyes, they were now piercing, luminous silver. My silver, the same silver burning like a brand on my neck. I touched the mark. My fingers came away clean, but shimmering with a substance that smelled of ozone and storm-charged air. The stunned crowd was silent. King Alden turned, his face a mask of disbelieving rage. "What?" his voice cracked. "What is this?" Kael straightened, his face smoothing into his impassive mask, but his hand remained over his heart. "I do not know, my king." It was a lie. I felt the lie because I suddenly felt him, the steady, strong rhythm of his heartbeat now syncing with my ragged pulse. Torin's heart was a wild war drum. Silas's was a deep, patient tide. 3 hearts, 3 new, dark bonds where one had died. Alden's scent soured with fear and fury. "Take her to the dungeons." 6 guards in wolf form circled me, teeth bared. But Kael was suddenly there, standing between them and me. "Stand down." The guards hesitated. Torin appeared beside him, his growl vibrating the stones. "You heard him. Stand down." "The law is clear, my king," Silas's quiet voice cut through the tension. "A rejected mate cannot be harmed for 7 days. The moon goddess's mercy, written by your ancestors." Alden's jaw clenched. "She is runt." "She is under the crown's protection," Kael stated, his voice frigid. "Until the 7 days pass, any wolf who harms her answers to us." The silence was absolute. The 3 generals formed a triangle around my broken form. Their combined presence, steel, smoke, rain, was an unbreakable wall. Alden's gaze burned into me with pure hatred. "Fine," he spat. 7 days, but when the time is up, I want her gone from this earth." He turned and left, the crowd flowing after him like a retreating tide. Then it was just the rain, the shadows, and the 3 most dangerous wolves in the kingdom who had just committed treason for a stranger. I tried to stand. My legs betrayed me. Torin caught me before I hit the ground. His hands were enormous, impossibly careful. The moment he touched me, the silver thread between us hummed with raw power. He inhaled sharply. "Her scent is unstable," Kael observed, his analytical gaze on me. "Honey and jasmine, but it's fracturing, changing." Silas approached without a sound, crouching before me. His silver eyes held mine. "If I am right about what you are, we have less than 7 days to hide you." He reached out, his fingers hovering near the burning mark on my neck. The connection didn't need touch. The bond flared. The world didn't go white. It went silver. I saw through 3 sets of eyes at once. Kael's tactical view of the exits, Torin's fierce protective focus on my face, Silas's own vision seeing the shimmer of power around me that no one else could see. I smelled the rain through their senses, heard the distant citadel through their ears. I jerked back, severing the link. Silas stared, his expression of profound revelation. "What was that?" Torin growled, his hold tightening. "A catalyst bond," Silas breathed. "She didn't just survive the rejection, she absorbed the power, shattered it, and cast it out, seeking anchors, the strongest wolves in range." He looked at Kael, grave. "We are not marked by accident. We are marked because she needs us." "Impossible," Kael said, but I felt his heart leap through the bond. "Clearly," Silas murmured, his eyes returning to me. "So what do we do?" Torin's voice was rough. "If the king finds out." "Then he will not kill her," Kael finished, his voice like ice. "He will cage her, use her as a weapon to bind an army to his will." "Then we hide her," Silas said. "What do you know of your bloodline, Elara?" "Nothing," I whispered, the truth a bitter ash on my tongue. "You are not weak," Silas said, and his voice held a thread of awe. "You are a latent storm, and the king just unleashed you in the heart of his fortress." 3 pairs of eyes held mine. 3 bonds, thick and unbreakable, now tied me to the only wolves who could be my salvation or my doom. Thunder roared above, shaking the very stones of the citadel. "We move, now," Kael commanded. Torin lifted me as if I were weightless, his scent a sheltering cloak. For the first time since the shattering, my wolf quieted, pressing close to the warmth. Silas simply melted into the gathering dark, a promise of unseen protection. Kael checked the deserted path ahead. 7 days, he said, his ice-blue eyes meeting me in the gloom. 7 days we have to teach you control. His gaze hardened. After that, we go to war. The whispering wilds were a living tomb. Ancient trees with bark like cracked bone twisted towards a sky they had blotted out centuries ago. No birdsong, no rustle of prey, only the suffocating silence of a place that had forgotten light. The air was thick with the scent of wet rot and deep, secret earth. This was the kingdom's shame, a place where nightmares were buried. And now it was our only refuge. Every hoofball of Kael's steed sent a fresh jolt of agony up my spine. The 3 new bonds in my chest were not gentle threads, they were barbed wire, tightening with every mile, a constant reminder of the power that had lashed out in my desperation. Torin rode behind me, his massive frame a furnace at my back. One arm was a solid bar of iron across my waist, holding me steady. I could feel the tremble in him, not from fear, but from a fury so potent it simmered in his very blood. His scent of smoke and forge fire was a tangible cloud, and beneath it the growl of his wolf was a constant vibration against my spine. Kael led without a word, a grim specter navigating the oppressive gloom. His cold steel scent cut through the forest's decay, a blade of pure purpose. He hadn't looked back once. The third heartbeat, a slow, deep rhythm like a distant drum, pulsed to my left. Silas was there, somewhere in the tangled darkness. I couldn't see him, but I could feel him, a patient shadow moving parallel to our path, his presence a cool whisper against the heat of Torin's rage. "The grove is close." Kael's voice was abrupt, shattering the long silence. It didn't echo. The forest swallowed sound whole. "We make our stand there." "Will it be safe?" My own voice was a rasp, broken by exhaustion and pain. Kael finally glanced back, his ice-blue eyes catching a sliver of phantom light. "Safe is a fantasy, but the king's trackers fear the deep wilds. The forest consumes the unwary." "Are we not unwary?" I whispered. Torin's chest rumbled against my back. "We're desperate. It's different." The trees thinned suddenly, and we entered a clearing that defied the gloom. Silver moss glowed with its own soft light, carpeting the ground in pulsating waves. At its heart stood a crumbling stone cottage, veiled in vines that looked more like veins. A stream of water so clear it was invisible except for its gentle murmur traced the eastern edge. Here, the air smelled of green, growing things, and a profound, ancient peace. It was a lie. I knew it the moment we stopped. There was no peace for us. Torin dismounted and lifted me down. My knees buckled instantly. He caught me, his hands firm on my waist, his gaze searching my face. "You're burning up." "It's the bonds," Silas said. He emerged from the tree line as if stepping from a dark curtain, his midnight rain scent a shock of coolness. "They are settling, or trying to. Her body is fighting the connection." Kael was already securing the perimeter, his movements efficient. "We have less time than I calculated. Her scent is a beacon even here. The king will have sent hunters." "Then we teach her to dim the beacon," Torin said, his voice leaving no room for argument. He guided me toward the cottage. Inside was a single room, dominated by a cold hearth and a dust-shrouded bed. Torin built a fire with brisk, angry motions. The scent of cedar smoke began to battle the scent of my fear. Kael entered, closing the weathered door. "The first lesson is control. A catalyst bond is a two-way conduit. You are drawing from our strength to survive. Now you must learn to pull our essence around you, to mask your own." "I don't know how," I admitted, the shame hot in my throat. "Then you learn," Kael said, his tone leaving no room for failure. "Focus on the thread that connects you to me. Can you feel it?" I closed my eyes. Past the pain, past the terror, I found it. A line of cold, sharp silver, humming with a disciplined, formidable power. "Yes." "Good. Now pull. Not on the power, but on the scent. Imagine drawing my presence into you, wearing it like a cloak." I tried. The bond resisted, pushing back against my clumsy effort. A spike of pain lanced through my skull. I gasped, stumbling. Kael's hand shot out, gripping my forearm, skin to skin. The world vanished. I was not in the cottage. I was in Kael's mind. I saw the clearing through his eyes, not as a sanctuary, but as a tactical diagram. I noted every vulnerable approach, calculated sightlines, catalogued potential weapons in the fallen branches. I felt the cool, relentless flow of his logic, the absolute control he wielded over every instinct. And beneath that frozen river, I felt something else, a fierce, obsessive need to protect. Not me, not yet, but the asset, the key to a future he had already begun to plan. It was terrifying in its intensity. "Pull," his voice echoed in the shared space.
I pulled. This time, the bond yielded. I felt my own wild honey and jasmine scent fold inward, compressed and shrouded beneath the overwhelming, impregnable scent of cold steel and winter sky. I opened my eyes. The fire seemed dimmer. Kael's gaze was wide, his grip tightening. "How do you feel?" "I feel like I'm drowning in a frozen river," I choked out. A flicker of something, approval, perhaps, crossed his face. "That means it's working." Silas, who had been observing silently from the corner, spoke. "The hunters will be here by dawn. 3 of them. They've caught the fading trail." Torin snarled, stepping forward. "Let them come. I'll greet them." "No," Kael said, releasing my arm. The connection broke, leaving me shivering. "Stealth is our ally now. Silas." The Shadow General simply nodded. One moment he was there, the next he had dissolved into the darkness of the cottage corner and was gone. No sound, no shift in the air, just an absence. "What will he do?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Torin's jaw was clenched. "What he must, what we all must." He looked at me, his golden eyes fierce. "You need to understand something, Elara. This isn't a storybook. We are the king's hounds, the monsters he sent to do monstrous things. We are not saving you because we are good. We are saving you because you are ours, and we protect what is ours." His words should have chilled me. Instead, a strange calm settled over my wolf. The truth, however brutal, was a stronger foundation than any pretty lie. We waited in silence. Through the bond, I felt Silas's heartbeat, steady and calm as he moved through the forest. I felt the moment he found the hunters, a spike of focused intensity, cold and lethal. Then a brief silent turmoil through the bond, like a stone dropping into a deep, dark well. Then nothing. Just before dawn, he returned. There was no blood on his hands, but his scent had changed. The midnight rain had turned to the acid tang of rust, the hearth ash to the smell of a recently smothered fire. "They will not report back," he said simply, his silver eyes meeting mine without apology. I saw it then. The cost, the first true price of my survival, was painted in the grim lines of their faces. The king's justice was cruel and public. Ours would be silent and absolute. Kael stood. "Dawn comes. The first lesson is over. The second begins now. We have 6 days left. In that time, you must learn not just to hide, but to see, to hear, to wield the bond as a weapon. For when we return to the citadel, we will not be hiding in the wilds. We will be walking into the beast's throat." Outside, the first true rays of dawn speared through the canopy, not with warmth, but with a pale, revealing light. The hunt was over. The war was just beginning.
The hunt was over, but as the first light of dawn broke over the whispering wilds, a new, more dangerous hunt was just beginning. Powerful, isn't it? If you're feeling the tension build, let us know where you're listening from in the comments below. And to make sure you never miss a chapter of this epic revenge story, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Your support is what brings these stories to life. Now, let's see what awaits them in the heart of the Citadel. The Citadel didn't just smell of stone and torch smoke. It smelled of lies. Old lies, new lies, lies woven into the very mortar. I stood in a narrow servant's passage, pressed against the cold wall, a hood drawn so low it swallowed my face. Around me, a river of shadowed figures flowed, maids with linens, kitchen boys with sacks of grain, stable hands reeking of horse and hay. I was a ghost among ghosts, the shadow maid. For 4 days in the wild grove, they had trained me. Kael's brutal lessons in control, forcing my scent to hide and bend beneath his. Torin's raw lessons in drawing strength from the bond, his fury becoming a shield for my fear. Silas's silent lessons in perception, teaching me to see glimpses through their eyes, to feel the world through 3 heartbeats. Now I was buried so deep beneath Kael's scent of cold steel that I could barely remember my own honey and jasmine. The generals had returned 3 days prior, claiming a sudden violent bout of wolf fever, a sickness that explained their absence and their erratic behavior. The king had accepted the story with a suspicious glare. Now they were back at their posts, and I was in the belly of the beast, smuggled in beneath a cart of turnips, my heart a frantic bird against my ribs. The servant river spilled into the back of the grand hall. I froze. The hall was packed, vibrating with tension. At the dais, King Alden held court, Lady Elara a porcelain statue at his side, and behind them, standing like pillars of stone, were my generals. Kael, scanning the crowd with detached precision. Torin, a simmering volcano of restrained power. Silas, a faint blur in the torchlight beside a column. The bond pulled tight, a triple-strand cord of awareness connecting us. Steady, the connection seemed to whisper. Do not look. Bring in the prisoners. Alden's command sliced through the murmur. Guards dragged 3 bloodied wolves into the center. Scouts. Their scents were a cocktail of fear, pain, and copper. My stomach turned to ice. These wolves, Alden proclaimed, his voice oily with false regret, were found at the edge of the whispering wilds, throats torn out, no scent, no tracks, killed by ghosts. He stood, his gaze sweeping the crowd. I want to know what killed my scouts, and I want to know if the ghosts live in my own house. The prisoners trembled. One, a woman with a gash across her cheek, broke. It smelled like a storm, my king, she sobbed, like steel and smoke and cold rain, like 3 wolves moving as one. The hall erupted. Alden raised a hand. Silence crashed down. 3 wolves moving as one. His head turned slowly, deliberately. His golden eyes locked on his generals. That sounds like a pack bond. The only wolves in this citadel with a bond strong enough for that are you 3. The accusation hung in the air, poison-tipped. Kael didn't flinch. If you are accusing us of treason, my king, say it plainly. I accuse nothing, Alden purred, descending the dais. He stopped inches from Torin. I am merely curious. Where were you 3 nights ago when my scouts were dying? In our quarters, recovering, as you ordered, Kael stated, each word a chip of ice. All 3 of you, together? Alden's smile was thin. How convenient. Torin took a half-step forward, the air around him crackling. Speak your mind, Alden, or hold your tongue. The king's smile vanished. He turned, his nose twitching. He sniffed the air, his gaze drifting toward the servants' corridor. I think, he said, his voice dropping to a horrific, intimate pitch, I smell honey. My blood turned to slush. I stopped breathing. Alden's eyes swept over the hooded figures. Honey and jasmine, a scent I know, a scent I rejected. His voice rose to a roar. Find her! Guards surged into the corridor like a tidal wave, ripping back hoods, shoving servants against walls. Panic, sharp and sour, flooded the air. I stood frozen, a statue of terror. Alden was walking toward me. 10 steps, 8, 6. The bond inside me exploded, not with fear, but with a ferocious 3-layered command. Pull. I pulled. I didn't just pull on Kael's scent. I pulled on the essence of all 3, the steel, the smoke, the rain. I dragged their combined presence into me, wrapping it around my core like a cocoon. My own scent vanished, utterly consumed. Alden stopped 2 feet away, frowning. He sniffed again, his brow furrowed. I could have sworn. He shook his head, turning away. Just servants, sweat and grime. Keep searching.
The guards pushed past me, unseeing. I was invisible, hidden beneath the storm of 3 alphas. I watched Alden retreat, and a new emotion ignited in my chest. Not fear, but a cold, clarifying fury. He had tried to erase me. Now he hunted me like vermin. My wolf lifted her head and bared her teeth. "Careful," Silas's voice seemed to whisper through the bond. "Fury has a scent, too." I forced the anger down into a dark, hard pit in my stomach. When I looked up, Kael was staring directly at me from across the hall. His gaze held mine for 1 piercing second. Then he looked away, but the message came through the bond, clear as spoken word. "The North Tower, midnight. Come alone."
The North Tower was the Citadel's forgotten bone, a place of dust and echoes. I climbed the spiral stairs, my hand trailing the cold stone, my pulse the only sound. Each general had sent their summons through the bond, Kael's a crisp command, Torin's a heated pull, Silas's a quiet summons. 3 calls, 1 destination. The door at the top was ajar. Inside the circular room, arrow-slit windows admitted spears of moonlight, and in those spears stood the 3 wolves who owned my soul. Kael stood by a window, a statue of calculated calm. Torin paced like a caged beast, the floorboards groaning under his weight. Silas leaned in the deepest shadow, a part of it. "Close the door," Kael said. His voice was calm, but the bond hummed with his icy fury. I pushed the heavy door shut. The sound was final. "That was too close," Kael stated, not turning. "Alden's suspicion is now a certainty. He knows we are involved. He just lacks proof." "Proof is coming," Silas murmured from the dark. "He has called the seers. At the next full assembly they will conduct a scent mapping. They will see the bonds. They will see the triple mark." The air left the room. A scent mapping was a deep, invasive magic. It wouldn't just smell my surface scent, it would reveal the silver threads knotted around our hearts. "Then we run, tonight," Torin growled, stopping his pacing. "The gates are sealed, the tunnels are watched," Kael countered, finally turning. His face was grim. "He has trapped us. The assembly is in 3 days. It is a snare, and we are walking into it." "So that's it?" Torin snarled, facing Kael. "We wait here for them to collar her, to drag her to some cell and bleed her for her power?" "I am not suggesting inaction. I am suggesting intelligence over instinct. Your instinct will get her killed." "And your cold calculation will get her caged," Torin shot back, taking a step forward. The space between them crackled with hostile energy. My wolf stirred, uneasy. "They are breaking," she whispered, "over you." "Stop." My voice was quieter than theirs, but it cut through the tension. They both turned to me. "The bond is not meant to split us apart. It's meant to make us stronger. Together." Silas moved then, gliding from the shadows into a sliver of moonlight. "She is right. The catalyst bond is a web. It fails if the anchor points fight. We must be unified, in purpose and in claim." He looked at me, his silver eyes luminous. "They are fighting because the bond is incomplete. It is potent, but it is temporary. You hold the threads, Elara. You could sever them, release us." His words were a physical blow. Why would I do that? "Because making it permanent changes everything," Kael said, his voice uncharacteristically rough. "It is not just a battle alliance, it is a claiming, forever." Torin looked at me, his golden eyes blazing with a raw, vulnerable fire. "We are asking, if you choose this, if you choose us, not because the magic forced us, but because you want it." I looked at them. Kael, whose cold logic was a fortress I could hide within. Torin, whose fierce fire was a shield that would burn the world for me. Silas, whose quiet depth was a sanctuary of understanding. They had given up their honor, their king, their very lives for a runt they owed nothing. My wolf did not whimper. She howled, a sound of pure, defiant yes. "I choose you," I said, the words leaving my lips and sealing my fate. "All of you." The bond sang, a resonant silver chord that vibrated in the center of my being. The temporary threads shimmered, thickened, and wound themselves permanently around my soul, around theirs. I felt the completion, an unbreakable tethering. Kael crossed the room first. He didn't kiss me. He pressed his forehead to mine, a gesture of staggering intimacy for a man of ice. "Then you are ours," he breathed, his scent wrapping around me, completely. Torin was next, his large hands framing my face with terrifying gentleness. "And we are yours," he vowed, his voice thick. The heat of him seeped into my bones. Silas completed the circle, his presence at my back a cool, steady strength. The triad is sealed. Now we face what comes as one. The moment of unity shattered as the door burst open. A guard stood panting. "Generals, the king demands you, now! In the dungeons, there's a body, another scout, and the scent, it's the storm again." The bond went cold. Silas had been busy, and now the king had his proof. Kael's face hardened into a mask of command. "Stay here," he ordered me. "Do not leave, do not make a sound." Torin caught my gaze, his eyes pleading and fierce. "Wait for us." Silas pressed the cool hilt of a small silver dagger in my hand. "If anyone comes through that door who is not us," he whispered, his breath chilling my ear, "use it." Then they were gone, the door closing with a thud of finality. I was alone in the tower, a queen of shadows, clutching a blade, listening to the citadel awake to the sound of hunting horns. The king's voice echoed from the stones below. "Find the traitors, bring their heads." The snare had sprung. Alone in the tower, time became a slow, dripping poison. I sat with my back to the cold stone, Silas's silver dagger a lifeline in my hand. I closed my eyes and followed the bond. 3 heartbeats, moving away from me, descending into the bowels of the citadel. Kael's rhythm was a controlled, marching tempo. I felt him enter the torchlit dungeon, saw through his fleeting shared sight the grim scene, a royal scout sprawled on the wet stones, the work unmistakably Silas's. I felt Kael's mind whirring, constructing lies, building a wall of plausible denial. Torin's heart was a furious drum. His rage was a hot tide through the bond, his wolf thrashing against its chains, screaming to return to me, to protect. He stood as Kael's bristling shadow, a silent promise of violence. Silas's pulse was the steady, deep pull of the ocean depths. He was the calm at the center. Through his connection, I sensed not the dungeon, but the citadel around it, the whispered fears of guards, the distant pacing of the king in his chambers, the subtle shift in the wind of power. Then Kael's heartbeat spiked, a flicker of alarm. A new presence had joined them in the dungeon, not the king, someone else. The bond brought me a name, whispered in Kael's thoughts. Lord Varen, High Seer. The door to the tower room flew open. I was on my feet, dagger raised, a snarl tearing from my throat before I recognized the silhouette. Kael, alone. His ice-blue eyes were wide, his controlled scent sharp with something I'd never sensed in him before. Dread. "We have a problem." He gripped my shoulders, his fingers biting. "The king has moved the assembly to dawn, tomorrow." My blood froze. The scent mapping? Worse, he's not just using the seers, he's using Varen. Varen doesn't just map scent, he dissects bonds. He will see the catalyst nature of the connection. He will see it's not just a pack bond, but a controlling link, and he will tell the king exactly what prize he has in his grasp. We run, now. We can't. His voice was hollow. Varen has already woven a silencing ward around the citadel. No one gets in or out, not even a shadow. We are the sealed jar, Elara, and at dawn he opens it. The room tilted. I stumbled back. Then what? We surrender? No. The fire returned to Kael's eyes, colder and harder than ever. We change the game. You are a catalyst. The bond doesn't just flow from you to us. It connects you to our connections, our loyalties, our debts. I didn't understand. Every soldier who has served with Torin and would follow him into the abyss, every scout who owes Silas their life, every tactician who respects my mind. He leaned closer. You can bond them, not like us, not a permanent claim, but a thread, a link, enough to make them hesitate, enough to make them choose a side when the chaos begins. Build a pack? Inside the citadel? Build an army, Kael corrected, tonight. It was madness. I had bonded 3 wolves by accident, in a moment of soul death. To intentionally reach out, to claim dozens. What if I can't? Then at dawn, Kael said, his gaze unwavering, we fight and we die, but we will not let him take you without a war that shakes this mountain to its foundations. The door opened again. Torin and Silas entered. Their faces were grim, their scents carrying the chill of the dungeon and the metallic promise of blood. They felt the plan through the bond the moment they saw Kael's face. How many do we need? Torin asked, no hesitation. 50 would give us a chance. 100 would turn the tide. Silas looked at me. Can you do it? I looked at my hands, at the silver mark shimmering faintly on my neck. I felt the 3 permanent threads, strong and sure. My wolf, once so timid, lifted her head inside me. She was not the runt anymore. She was the heart of the storm. Bring them to me, I said. They came, one by one, through the secret ways. A grizzlied sergeant with a scar from a battle where Torin had dragged him from a pile of corpses. A quiet female archer whose family Silas had spared from the king's purge. A young, sharp-eyed lieutenant who studied Kael's strategies like scripture. Each one knelt, each one I touched, my hand on a shoulder, my will reaching down the silver thread of my power. It was not like bonding the generals. This was finer, more delicate, stitching a temporary filament of loyalty, of shared purpose from my soul to theirs. I felt their surprise, their fear, then a dawning fierce allegiance as the catalyst magic touched them. Their eyes would flash silver just for a moment. 10, 20, 30. The weight was immense. Each new thread was a hook in my consciousness, a pull on my strength. My head pounded, my vision swim. By the time the moon was high, I had bonded 47. Enough, Kael ordered, his hand on my arm as I swayed. You're at your limit. I can do more, I slurred, the room tilting. No, Silas's voice was firm. The threads are stretched too thin. Push further and the entire web snaps. You will burn out your mind. I collapsed into the chair they guided me to. 47 hearts now beat in a discordant, terrifying chorus in the back of my mind. 47 wolves who would, when the moment came, look to me. Torin crouched before me, wiping a trickle of blood from my nose with shocking tenderness. What you've done. No catalyst in the old tales ever bonded so many so quickly. It's not enough, I whispered. It is a miracle, Kael said, and for the first time I heard a thread of awe in his voice. Now you must rest. Dawn comes. But rest was impossible. I sat by the arrow slit, watching the citadel below.
Through my new fractured web, I felt the unease spreading like a virus. The loyal wolves slept, my wolves waited. I felt the king's restless pacing in his chambers, a spike of paranoid energy, and I felt Varen, the High Seer, a void of cold, probing magic, preparing his tools. Silas brought me water. The bond is a weapon, but also a burden. You feel their fear. I feel everything, I confessed. Then focus on the three of us. His voice was a calming ripple in the chaos. We are your anchors. The storm around you may rage, but we are the unshakable stones. Hold to us. I reached for their threads, Kael's steel cable, Torin's forged chain, Silas's silken rope. I held on as the night bled away, as the first gray light of dawn stained the sky. The horns sounded, low and mournful, calling the assembly. It was time.
Dawn's light was not gentle. It was a pale, accusing finger pointing into the grand hall, illuminating every face, every flicker of fear. I stood once more on the obsidian floor, but I was not the shivering girl from a week before. I was the shadow maid, hooded, my scent a perfect, silent imitation of a lowly kitchen drudge, lard, hearth smoke, and parsley. I stood among the other servants lining the walls, invisible. The hall was a sea of wolves, 1,000 strong, the air thick with tension and the pungent aroma of collective anxiety. On the dais, King Alden was a figure of gleaming gold and impatience. Beside him stood Lord Varen, the High Seer. He was ancient, his skin like parchment stretched over bone, but his eyes were young, sharp, and hungry. They scanned the crowd, missing nothing. My generals stood at attention behind the throne. Kael, a statue of indifference, Torin, a contained explosion, Silas, a barely perceptible smudge in the light. 3 heartbeats, steady and strong, tethered to my soul, and beneath that, the quieter, newer chorus of 47 more. "Let the mapping begin," Alden's voice boomed. Varen stepped forward. He carried no tools. He simply raised his gnarled hands and the air in the hall changed. It grew heavy, sweet with the scent of crushed moonflowers and bitter myrrh, the scent of deep magic. A visible haze, like heat shimmer, rose from the floor and began to drift through the crowd. "Every wolf will present themselves to the center," Varen intoned, his voice rustling like dry leaves. "The magic will reveal the truth of their bonds, any hidden connections, any unnatural links." One by one, wolves stepped forward. The haze would swirl around them, sometimes tinging blue for a common pack bond, sometimes flickering red for a blood oath. The process was slow, agonizing. The king's gaze was a predator's, sweeping the room, lingering on his generals. My turn among the servants would come last, a final humiliation. I felt a pulse through the bond from Kael. Steady. The magic is a net. Do not struggle. Be the water that flows through it. The line dwindled. A guard gestured roughly to our row of servants. We shuffled forward. My heart was a frantic bird, but my scent held, a perfect, pathetic disguise. The old seer's magic washed over the maid in front of me. Nothing. She moved on. Then it was my turn. I stepped into the center. The shimmering haze enveloped me. It was cold, invasive, probing at my skin, my breath, my very spirit. It scraped against the careful shield of borrowed scent I held. For a terrifying moment it clung, curious. Then it began to slide away, finding nothing of interest, just a low-born servant. I dared to breathe. Varen's head snapped up, his milky, hungry eyes locked directly at me. Wait. The magic halted. It reversed, coiling back around me, tighter, sharper. It pierced the shield of lard and parsley. It scraped it away like scales from a fish. And there, underneath, it found me. Wild honey, burnt jasmine, and the roaring silver tempest of catalyst power. A gasp went through the hall as my true scent exploded into the space, unmistakable, unforgettable.
Varen's lips peeled back in a ghastly smile. There you are. The magic shimmered, then coalesced. From the haze, silver lines erupted, not one, but 3 thick, brilliant cords of light that shot from my chest across the hall. They did not end in the crowd, they ended at the dais. One connected my heart to Kael's heart, one to Torin's heart, one to Silas's heart. The triple bond was laid bare for the entire kingdom to see. The silence was absolute. Stunned, King Alden rose slowly, his face a mask of dawning, furious comprehension. "A catalyst," he breathed. Then his voice rose to a shriek. "A catalyst! And you!" He pointed a trembling finger at his generals. "You dare bind my weapon to yourselves?" Kael stepped forward, his face calm. "She is not a weapon, my king. She is a wolf, one you rejected and sentenced to death. We chose to save a life." "You chose treason," Alden roared. "Seize them! Seize the abomination!" The king's guard moved, but from the crowd, others moved faster. The sergeant with the scar stepped in front of the guards approaching Torin. The archer knocked an arrow, aiming not at me, but at the king's guard captain. The sharp-eyed lieutenant drew his sword, standing back to back with Kael. All through the hall, wolves I had touched, 47 faces shifted position. They did not attack, they simply interposed themselves, a silent, defiant barrier. The hall erupted into chaos, shouts, snarls, the shriek of steel being drawn. Alden stared, his fury turning to bewilderment. "What is this? Guards, cut them down!" But the guards hesitated. They were facing not just 3 traitor generals, but their own comrades, their bunkmates, their friends. Varen's eyes were alight with greedy fascination. Fascinating. She has woven a web of influence, not full bonds, but compelling threads of loyalty, a true, living catalyst. "Enough of your prattling," Alden screamed. He drew his own sword, a legendary blade of sun metal. "I will carve the truth from her corpse myself." He leaped from the dais, a golden avenger, his fury a tangible force. He wasn't coming for the generals, he was coming for me. And the bond inside me sang. It wasn't a sound, it was an imperative, a command from the deepest part of my being, answered by the 3 hearts tied to mine. They moved as one. Kael didn't intercept the king. He calculated the angle, the speed, and with a flick of his wrist sent a dagger spinning to knock a torch from its sconce. It tumbled, spilling burning oil across the king's path. Torin didn't attack. He shifted, not fully, but just his arm. His hand became a monstrous clawed paw, and he brought it down on the obsidian floor with a thunderous crack. A fracture spiderwebbed through the obsidian, making the king stumble. Silas didn't appear. He simply was, standing between me and the king's now staggering form, a short, dark blade in his hand, its tip hovering an inch from Alden's throat. The king froze, his sword arm still raised, his eyes wide with shock. The entire hall froze. In the ringing silence, I walked forward. I pushed back my hood. I let every wolf see the runt. They rejected one, standing while the king's own blade was held at bay by his most trusted shadow. "You called me an abomination." My voice carried, clear and cold. "You called my saviors traitors. You see bonds and think only of chains, of weapons." I looked past him, at the sea of wolves, at my 47 whose loyalty shimmered in their eyes. I see bonds as a choice. They chose me, as I now choose them. I turned my gaze back to Alden. "Your rule is fear. Your justice is cruelty. I am giving them a new choice." I raised my voice to a shout. "Any wolf who wishes to leave this hall, to follow their king, may do so now. No harm will come to you." I let the offer hang, a lethal gamble. "But if you stay," I continued, softer, yet somehow louder, "you choose something new. A pack built not on blood, but on loyalty. Not on fear, but on strength together. You choose the storm."
For a long, breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, with the sound like a sigh, a wolf from the king's own guard dropped his sword. It clattered on the stone. Then another, and another. It was not a flood, but a trickle that became a stream. Wolves began to kneel, not to the king on the dais, but turning towards the center of the hall, towards me. Alden's face crumbled from fury into utter, devastated disbelief. He was not being overthrown by an army. He was being abandoned by his own sway. He looked at me, his golden eyes hollow. "What have you done?" I met his gaze. The bond with my generals, a fortress around my heart. I survived, and now I rise.
The kneeling wolves were a carpet of submission, but the silence they created was fragile, a soap bubble waiting to pop. King Alden stood within it, Silas's blade a promise at his throat, his golden armor seeming suddenly cheap, like painted tin. His eyes, hollow with shock, found mine. The hatred there had not died. It had been refined, compressed into a diamond-hard point of madness. "You think you've won?" His voice was a dry rasp, not a roar. It was more dangerous. "You think a handful of turncoats and your pet monsters is a kingdom?" A terrible, cracked smile spread across his face. "I am the king of the Northern Reach. My power does not reside in this hall." He snapped his fingers. Not a signal to guards, a signal to something else. From outside the great doors, a sound began, a low, rhythmic thunder. Not hoofbeats, footsteps. Hundreds, then thousands of them, marching in grim unison. The very stones of the citadel trembled. Through the bond, I felt it. Kael's icy focus shattered into genuine alarm. The Southern legions, he recalled them, they're at the gates. Alden's smile widened. "You rallied the mice in the walls. I called the wolves from the plains. 500 battle-hardened veterans, loyal to the crown, not to pretty words about choice." He looked at Silas's blade, unimpressed. "You can kill me, it will make you regicides, and my legion will tear your new pack apart, down to the last pup, to avenge me. Is that the legacy you want, Catalyst? A hill of corpses bearing your scent?" He had checkmated us. Public victory had turned into a death trap. We had the citadel, but he had it surrounded by an army that would slaughter everyone inside to purge his shame. The newfound courage in the hall curdled back into fear. Wolves who had knelt began to look at the doors, at the windows, their loyalty to the new idea wavering before the old, brutal reality of steel. Torin's growl was a constant, furious vibration. Kael's mind was a whirlwind, searching for a flaw in the trap. Silas's blade didn't waver, but his presence in the bond was a question. "Your move." Alden saw my hesitation. He pressed his advantage, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper only I and the generals could hear. "Here is my bargain, runt. You will come with me willingly. You will dissolve these aberrations with my seers, and you will bond yourself and your power to me permanently." My blood ran cold. He didn't want to kill the Catalyst. He wanted to own it, to become the sole anchor for a power that could bind armies. "In return," he continued, "I will spare your traitor generals. I will even grant them exile. A quick death is more than they deserve, but for you, I will be merciful. Their lives, thanks to you." It was a devil's bargain. He would make me the engine of his conquest, and my first act would be to sever the bonds with the 3 wolves who had given me everything, to betray them, to save them. The bonds themselves were coiled at the thought. Agony, white-hot and desolate, lanced through me from their end. Torin's was a roar of denial, Kael's a spike of icy despair, Silas's a deep, silent wound. Never, their hearts screamed silently to mine. "Do not trade yourself." But I looked at the hall, at the fearful faces of the wolves who had taken a chance on me. I looked at my generals, facing a death sentence. My voice, when it came, was thin but clear. "And the wolves here, the ones who knelt?" Alden's lip curled. "They will be punished, of course, but they may live as an example. My mercy, thanks to you."
He had thought of everything. He was offering me a way to be a martyr, to bear all the sin and save all the souls. It was a hero's role, twisted into a cage. I closed my eyes. The bond was a tumult of protest, but beneath the storm I felt something else, a strange, calm clarity. The catalyst power wasn't just about linking hearts, it was about understanding them. I felt Alden's thread, not a bond, but a black, hungry vacuum of ambition and fear. He was terrified, not of death, but of being forgotten, of being weak. That was his flaw. I opened my eyes. I need to speak to my generals, alone, to say goodbye, to dissolve the bonds properly, or the magic might backlash and kill me. What use is a dead catalyst? Varen, the seer, nodded slowly, his greedy eyes assessing me. It is possible. A forced sever could damage the source. Alden weighed the risk. It was minimal. We were surrounded. You have 5 minutes in that antechamber. He gestured to a small side door. Varen, ward the door. Nothing gets in or out, not even a whisper. We were herded into the small windowless room, me, Kael, Torin, and Silas. The heavy oak door thudded shut. The air hummed as Varen's magic sealed it. We were in a silent, magical tomb. Torin immediately grabbed my arms. No, Elara, no. We fight, we die together. We do not bow to that snake. He's right, Kael said, his voice stripped of all calculation, raw. This is not a tactical surrender. It is a defeat of everything we are. You are not a commodity to be traded. Silas simply looked at me, his silver eyes seeing too much. You have a different plan. I looked at the 3 of them, my angers, my storm. He is afraid of being insignificant. He believes an army at the gates is his ultimate power. I reached out, taking Torin's hand, then Kael's, then Silas's. The complete bond flared, a circuit of pure silver power connecting us. I showed them, not with words, but through the bond. I pulled them into the web I had spun, not just to our 47. I showed them the reach of the catalyst power. Every wolf in the hall who had felt that moment of choice, whose loyalty had trembled towards a new idea, they weren't bonded, but they were touched, impressionable. And outside the walls, the 500 Southern legionaries, they were strangers, loyal only to the crown. But they were still wolves, and the catalyst power, at its peak, did not need touch. It needed resonance. It needed a song strong enough for distant hearts to hear. It will take everything, I whispered, tears of strain already forming. It might break me. It will certainly break the web. It's a single note, a blast of pure will, not to bond them, but to shatter their certainty, to make them hesitate. Kael understood first. His tactical mind saw it. A distraction, not to win their loyalty, but to create a flaw in their formation, a moment of doubt. A moment is all we need, Torin growled, hope igniting in his eyes. We don't need to beat the army. We need to reach its commander, to cut the head off the snake. Silas nodded. The Lion of the South, Commander Rykar. He is in the courtyard, proud, pragmatic, not a fanatic for Alden, but for order. If order suddenly looks like chaos, we offer him a new order, I finished. But first we have to get to him. The plan was insane, a gamble with all our lives, but it was not surrender. We are with you, Kael said, his hand tightening on mine, always. We formed a circle, our foreheads touching. I drew on them not to mask myself, but to fuel myself. I pulled their strength, Kael's unyielding will, Torin's boundless fury, Silas's bottomless calm into the core of my being. I focused it all into the catalyst power, into the web of 47 threads, and I aimed it not inward, but outward, through the stone walls, towards the 1,000 hearts in the citadel and the 500 outside. I did not send a message, I sent a feeling, a wave of pure collective resolve, the courage of the choice, the rightness of the stand, the terrible, beautiful cost of freedom. It was not a command, it was a revelation. For a single suspended second, I felt it ripple out. I felt the fear in the hall soften. I felt the rigid discipline of the Southern legions stutter.
And then the power blew back. It was like holding a lightning bolt. The web of 47 threads snapped, severing with a psychic scream. The backlash hit me like a physical hammer. I cried out, blood bursting from my nose and the corners of my eyes. I collapsed, but I had done it. Through the roaring in my ears, I heard it, not the unified roar of an army, but a confused, rising tumult from the courtyard, shouts, questions, the sound of perfect order crumbling. The door blasted inward, splintered by a furious King Alden, Varen behind him. "What did you do?" the king screamed. Kael and Torin were already moving, catching me as I fell. Silas faced the king, a blade in each hand. "We changed the game," Silas said softly, and from outside a new horn blew, not the king's call, the call for a parley. Commander Rykar was asking to talk. The king's face went from fury to utter panic. He had lost his certainty, and in that moment he looked exactly like what he feared most, insignificant.
I was a puppet with cut strings. My body was a hollow, aching shell. My mind a field of static after the psychic detonation. Torin carried me, my head lolling against his shoulder as we emerged from the shattered antechamber into chaos. The grand hall was no longer a court. It was a fractured landscape. Wolves huddled in uncertain clusters, the earlier lines of allegiance blurred by the wave of emotion I had blasted into them. The doors to the courtyard stood open, and the sound from outside was not the silent, threatening presence of a disciplined army, but the agitated growl of a confused beast. King Alden stumbled ahead of us, his golden magnificence looking tawdry and desperate. "Rykar!" he bellowed as he burst into the daylight. "Stand your men down! I command you!" The courtyard of the Silver Citadel was a vast stone-paved plain, now filled with the Southern Legion. They were a sea of weathered leather and gray steel, 500 strong, standing in perfect, ominous blocks. At their head, mounted on a colossal, scarred werewolf, was Commander Rykar, the Lion of the South. He was not what I expected. He was not a young, fiery fanatic. He was a man in his prime, with a face like seasoned oak and eyes the color of a winter river. He looked down at his king with an expression of weary patience, not reverence. "My king." Rykar's voice was a gravelly rumble carrying easily over the tense silence. "I received an urgent summons to secure the citadel against insurrection. I see the insurrection. I also see something else." His cool gaze swept over the scene. The king, wild-eyed, his 3 most famous generals, one carrying a broken girl, the faces of citadel wolves peering from the doors, their fear mixed with a strange defiance. "This is your insurrection, Rykar!" He jabbed a finger towards us. "These traitors, and this abomination who bewitches minds. Execute them, now!" Rykar didn't move. His wolf let out a low huff. "I suppose you summoned me to kill your own high generals, my king, and a girl who, by the scent of it, is bleeding out from a power I do not understand." He shifted his gaze to Kael. "General Kael, your reputation precedes you. Explain this." This was the moment, the flaw in Alden's perfect trap. Rykar was a soldier, loyal to the crown, but more loyal to sense, to order. Alden had presented him with chaos and demanded blind slaughter. Rykar was hesitating. Kael, still supporting Torin, who held me, stepped forward. He was pale, but his voice was the same clear, sharp steel. "Commander, the king rejected his fated mate, Elara of the Forgotten Vale. In doing so, he triggered a latent bloodline. She is a catalyst. Her survival created a bond with us. The king sees a weapon to be controlled. We saw a life to be saved. He has offered her a choice, eternal servitude to him
or the death of everyone in this citadel, including your men who would have to storm these walls." Rikar's eyes narrowed. "A catalyst." He said the word like a man naming a legendary, dangerous beast. "The stories are true?" "As true as the bond you see broken inside her," Silas spoke from beside Kael, his voice a quiet knife in the stillness. "She just expended the last of that power, not to attack you, Commander, but to broadcast the truth of this choice, to give every wolf here, yours and ours, a moment of clarity. Do you fight for a king who would enslave a power of the old world, or do you stand for something that might be worth preserving?" It was a masterstroke. Silas framed it not as a rebellion, but as a moral stand, a soldier's choice. Alden was sputtering. "Lies! They seek to steal the kingdom! They have poisoned your minds with her magic!" "What magic, Alden?" A new voice, weak but clear, cut through the air. Mine. I forced my eyes open, pushing against the crushing fatigue. Torin's arms tightened. "I have no magic left. You felt it break. All I have left is the truth, and the choice I made not to be your weapon." I looked at Rykar, meeting his Winter River gaze. "They chose to protect me. What will you choose, Commander? To be the blade that kills the last hope of something new, or the shield that allows a choice to be made?" I had nothing left. No power, no persuasion, only the raw, bleeding truth. Rykar looked from me to my generals, to his own men, who were listening, their discipline holding but their curiosity palpable. He looked finally at King Alden, who was vibrating with impotent rage. "My oath," he said slowly, "is to the crown, to the stability of the realm." He paused, the most dangerous pause I had ever witnessed. A king who would use an ancient power as a slave is a tyrant from the old tales. A king who demands I slaughter his own loyal wolves to cover his shame is not a king who ensures stability. He straightened in his saddle. "I will not order my men to storm this citadel, not for this." The air rushed out of Alden's lungs as if he'd been struck. "You traitorous dog!" he shrieked, his sanity snapping. He didn't order his few remaining loyal guards. He simply raised his sun-metal sword and with a cry of pure rage charged at me. He had nothing left but the desire to destroy the source of his ruin. Time seemed to slow. Torin roared, moving to set me down and shift. Kael was already moving to intercept. Silas's hand blurred towards a throwing knife. But they were all half a second too slow, too far away. The killing blow never fell. From the side, a gray blur shot forward. It was Commander Rykar. He hadn't drawn a weapon. He simply kicked his massive warwolf forward, interposing the beast's armored shoulder between Alden and me. Alden's legendary sword, meant for my heart, bit deep into reinforced leather and the wolf's tough hide. The warwolf snarled in pain, but held his ground. Rykar looked down at his king, his face etched with final disappointment. "You would murder a helpless girl before 1,000 witnesses. You are no king of mine." It was the ultimate condemnation. The Lion of the South had chosen. Alden stared, wide-eyed, at the sword embedded in the loyal beast that had just saved me. He looked at Rykar's stony face. He looked at the sea of his own legionaries, whose eyes now held not loyalty, but a cold, judgmental silence. He was utterly and completely alone. With a sob that was part fury, part utter desperation, King Alden wrenched his sword free. But he did not attack again. He turned, and he ran.
not towards his throne, but towards the postern gate at the rear of the courtyard, a broken man fleeing the ruins of his own making. For a moment, no one moved. Then a single clear command from Rykar. Let him go. He wheeled his injured wolf and rode back to his lines, leaving us in the center of the courtyard, under the gaze of 1,000 wolves, holding the shattered pieces of a realm. The king was gone. The battle was over. But the war for the future had just begun. The silence after Alden's flight was heavier than any battle cry. The courtyard held its breath, 1,000 wolves caught between the ghost of a fallen king and the specter of an uncertain dawn. I was laid on a stone bench near the wall, the world swimming at the edges of my vision. The permanent bonds with my generals were intact, but they felt thin, strained, like ropes that had held a falling mountain and were now frayed. Kael, Torin, and Silas stood around me, a protective triangle, but their focus was divided. They were generals surveying a new, terrifying battlefield, a leaderless kingdom. Commander Rykar's deadline was a blade hanging over all our heads. Sunset. The Southern Legion had not withdrawn. They had simply formed a wide, loose perimeter around the citadel grounds, a silent, steel-gray wall. They were not occupying, but they were present, a reminder that power, for now, resided with the man who controlled the largest army. Inside the citadel, a fragile, buzzing energy took hold. Wolves who had knelt to me looked to us now for direction. Those who had remained loyal to Alden hid, terrified of reprisal. The vast majority were simply confused, adrift. We retreated to the war room, a place of maps and strategies that now felt like a child's toys. I sat, wrapped in a blanket, sipping water that tasted of nothing. Kael is a pragmatist, Kael said, his finger tracing a line on a map of the Northern Reach. He will not rule himself. He sees it as a soldier's burden, not a prize. But he needs stability, a symbol, a legitimate head to swear fealty to, or he will be forced to install a regent, likely himself, to prevent the realm from splintering into a dozen warlord territories. A symbol, Torin echoed, his gaze landing on me. It wasn't accusatory, it was grimly factual. I flinched. No, I am not a queen. I am a mistake, a catalyst for chaos, that's all. You are the catalyst who ended a tyrant's reign, Silas corrected softly, leaning against the mantle. The wolves who knelt did not kneel to Kael's tactics, or Torin's strength, or my shadows. They knelt to the idea you represented, the choice, the storm. You are the symbol, whether you want it or not. Kael will accept it, Kael continued, his mind racing down the logical paths. You are of a royal bloodline, however forgotten. The catalyst lineage is ancient, revered in some tales, feared in others, but it is a royal power. Your bond with us, the king's own generals, lends legitimacy. It looks less like a coup and more like a succession, a tragic, necessary transition. The word succession made my stomach turn. And what then? I wear a crown I never wanted, rule a people who fear what I am, become the thing Alden wanted to make me, a figurehead for power? No, Torin's voice was fierce. You rule differently. You break the crown. Like you said, you make the new laws. No more rejections, no more rule by fear. It's not that simple, I whispered, the weight of it crushing me. I'm broken. The catalyst cower is gone. I felt it snap. I'm just a runt again. The power may be dormant, not gone, Silas mused, but it does not matter. Your power was never just the magic. It was the choice, the courage. That is what they followed. That is what you must lead with. The hours bled away. Delegations came. Elders from the citadel, their faces lined with worry, captains of the guard seeking orders. Rykar sent a taciturn lieutenant for our decision. We had none. I was paralyzed. Finally, as the sun began to paint the sky in hues of fire and blood, Silas knelt before my chair. He took my cold hands in his.
Elara, you asked us once to choose you. We did. Now you must choose them." He gestured vaguely, encompassing the citadel, the realm beyond. "You can walk away. We will take you to the furthest corner of the earth, and we will protect you until our last breath. That is one choice." He paused, his silver eyes holding me. "Or you can choose to stay, to take this shattered thing and try to build something better, not because you want a crown, but because you can bear the weight of it, and you will not bear it alone. The bond is not just for battle, it is for this too. We will be your counsel, your strength, your balance, always." It was the truest thing he had ever said. The bond hummed between us, not with magic, but with a steadfast, unshakable promise. I looked at Kael, the strategist who could build a new world from ruins, at Torin, the protector whose heart was a fortress for the weak, at Silas, the watcher who saw the truths in shadows. I was not just Elara, the runt. I was the point where 3 mighty rivers met. Together, we could be a delta, creating new land, nourishing new life. I stood up, my legs shaky but holding. The blanket fell away. "Tell Commander Rykar that the realm will not be without a head, but it will have a new heart. Tell the wolves of the citadel to gather in the courtyard at sunset." They didn't smile. They nodded, their faces set with the same solemn resolve. The time of hiding was over. As the sun dipped below the battlements, I walked out onto the raised landing overlooking the courtyard. It was packed. Before me stood the sea of citadel wolves. To the sides, the grim blocks of the Southern Legion watched, Commander Rykar at their forefront, his expression unreadable. I wore no crown, only my simple gown, stained with dirt and blood. The silver mark on my neck was visible, a testament to what had been and what was to come. The silence was expectant, fearful. I took a deep breath, and I spoke not as a queen giving a decree, but as one wolf speaking to many. King Alden is gone. His rule of fear is ended. My voice carried on the evening air. I do not stand before you as his heir. I stand before you as the consequence of his cruelty. I am Elara of the Forgotten Valley. I am the catalyst. A murmur swept through the crowd. I cannot promise you peace. The road ahead will be hard. The surrounding kingdoms will test us. The wounds within us will take time to heal. I paused, letting the truth sink in. But I can promise you this. From this day, no wolf will be cast out for being weak. No bond will be severed without just cause. Strength will be measured in loyalty, in courage, in the will to protect the pack, not in the sharpness of your claws. I looked directly at Rykar. "Commander, you serve the realm, so do I. Will you and your legion serve with me, not as subjects to a throne, but as guardians of a new beginning?" It was a gamble as great as any in the hall. Rykar held the real power. He studied me for a long moment. Then his gaze swept over my generals, standing steadfast behind me. He saw the bond, not of magic, but of unwavering unity. He dismounted. He walked forward, alone, until he stood at the foot of the landing. Then the Lion of the South, the most powerful military mind in the realm, went to one knee. He did not bow his head. He looked up at me, a soldier acknowledging his commander. "The Southern Legion," he said, his gravelly voice loud in the stillness, "stands with the crown." A ripple became a wave. All around the courtyard, wolves began to kneel, citadel guards, servants, soldiers, a sea of submission, not taken by force, but given in hope. In that moment, I felt the weight descend. It was immense. It was terrifying. But through the bond, I felt 3 pillars settle beneath it, holding it with me. The sun vanished. Twilight embraced the citadel. The runt was gone. The queen had risen.
A crown is not a glittering circle of metal. It is the first stone placed on your shoulders, and every day more are added. The week after my ascension was a blur of crushing responsibility. decrees to draft with Kael's meticulous precision, security to organize with Torin's fierce protectiveness, a network of whispers and loyalties to map with Silas's subtle skill. I was a figurehead learning to be a foundation, and it left me perpetually breathless. The first decree was the easiest to write, the hardest to enforce. We called it the Bonding Accord. It abolished the ancient, brutal right of unilateral rejection. Now, to sever a fated bond required the petition of both wolves and the judgment of a council of elders and healers. It was a radical shift, and the traditionalists, led by a few of Alden's remaining loyalists, grumbled about defying the moon goddess's will. The second decree dissolved the privileges of high-born bloodlines. Positions in the new guard, in the council, would be earned. The first captain I appointed under this new law was Anya, the female archer from my original 47, whose aim was true and whose loyalty had been forged in the courtyard's tension. The third act was not a decree, it was a pyre. We dragged King Alden's elaborate, gem-encrusted throne into the main courtyard. It was a hideous thing, all gilded claws and towering spikes, designed to intimidate. As twilight fell, I stood before the assembled citadel, a torch in my hand. "This seat was built on fear," I said, my voice not ringing with royal authority, but clear and firm. It was a symbol of separation, of a king above his people. I looked at the expectant, anxious faces. We do not need a symbol of what we were. We need to build what we will be. I threw the torch. The oil-soaked wood caught with a whoomph. Flames, orange and hungry, climbed the gilded monstrosity. The heat washed over the crowd, and as the throne blackened and collapsed in on itself, something in the air broke, a collective sigh, a release of old poison. We were not just changing laws, we were burning the past. Later, in the quiet of what was now the council chamber, a room with a large round table, not a solitary dais, the exhaustion hit me. I slumped in a chair, the smell of smoke still clinging to my clothes. "It was the right thing," Kael said, pouring a cup of water and placing it before me. "Theatrical, but necessary. You gave them a ritual, a clear end." "I feel like we've only just begun to dig," I murmured. "The Southern Reach Lords are already sending inquiries, veiled threats about stability. The Eastern Barons are withholding their tithes, testing us." "Let them test," Torin growled from the doorway, his arms crossed. "Rykar's legion is loyal. Our new Citadel Guard is eager. We are not weak." "Strength is not just in soldiers," Silas remarked from the shadows by the window. He had been unusually quiet. "It is in information. Alden did not work alone. He had allies, beneficiaries. A spider does not build a web with only one strand. His web is still out there, broken but not gone. We must find the other spiders before they spin a new one." A cold dread, different from the fear of battle, trickled down my spine. "Do you think there's a conspiracy?" "I know there is," Silas said, turning. In his hand was a small, blackened piece of parchment, salvaged from the edge of the throne's fire. It was a fragment of a seal and a few handwritten words. "Ensure the catalyst does not reach the grove of—" The rest was ash. "The grove of whispers," Kael breathed, his face paling. "It's a legend, a place where the first catalysts were said to have drawn their power from the moon itself, a sacred site." "Alden knew of her potential," Silas said. "He wasn't just trying to kill a runt, he was trying to prevent her from reaching a source of power. Someone told him, someone who knows about catalysts, about the grove, someone who feared what she could become." The room grew colder. Our victory suddenly seemed small, fragile. We had won a citadel, but we were playing a game on a board whose edges we couldn't see. "We must find the grove," I said, the words feeling inevitable. "It is a myth," Torin argued, "a story to frighten pups." "The catalyst was a myth," Kael countered quietly, "and she is sitting at this table.
If the grove is real, it could be the key to understanding her power, to controlling it, or to someone else's controlling it. The implication hung in the air. If there was a faction that knew about catalysts, that had guided Alden, they would not stop just because he was gone. I was not just a political problem to them, I was an existential threat, or a prize. "We cannot go," I said, frustration sharp in my voice. "I am queen now. I cannot vanish on a myth hunt." "A queen whose power is dormant is vulnerable," Silas said, "and a queen who understands her power is a force beyond crowns. This is not a retreat, it is a strategic acquisition of knowledge, the most vital kind." "Then I will go alone," I insisted. 3 voices in perfect, furious unison. "No." The bond flared with their absolute refusal. Kael spoke for them all. "You are ours to protect, and the bond is a tether. Where you go, we go, especially into the unknown." He leaned forward, his icy eyes earnest. "The kingdom needs you, yes, but it needs you whole. It needs you understanding what you are. We will take a small, trusted group. Rykar can hold the citadel in our stead. We will move fast, in secret." It was decided. The weight on my shoulders shifted from the burden of rule to the peril of a quest. The outside threats were no longer just rival lords. They were shadows from a forgotten past, hunting a power they did not understand. That night, I stood on my balcony. The citadel was quiet, the smell of the throne's ashes still a ghost on the wind. I felt the 3 bonds, strong and sure, reaching to me from their respective chambers. We were not just a queen and her generals, we were a unit, facing a new kind of war. The moon above was a sliver, a claw mark in the sky. Somewhere out there, in the dark beyond the mountains, was a grove that held the secrets of my blood, and somewhere in the dark closer to home, spiders were weaving a new web. We had burned the throne. Now we had to find the roots of the tree before the shadows did.
Secrecy was a heavier cloak than any crown. 10 days after the burning of the throne, we slipped from the citadel like ghosts. Our party was 7. Myself, Kael, Torin, Silas, Commander Rykar's most trusted scout, a wiry, silent woman named Lena, and 2 of Torin's personal guard, brothers whose loyalty was absolute. We traveled not as royalty, but as merchants, our weapons hidden, our scents masked by pungent travel herbs. The map to the Grove of Whispers did not exist. We had only the fragment of the note and Silas's deduction. He believed the grove was not a place on any map, but a confluence of ley lines deep in the uncharted northern forests, a place of such natural power it resonated with catalyst blood. It was a direction, not a destination. The world beyond the citadel walls was a shock. I had lived my whole life within them, first as an overlooked orphan, then as a rejected mate, now as a fugitive queen. The forests were immense, older than kings, indifferent to our struggles. The air was clean and sharp, scented of pine and cold running water. For the first few days, this sheer freedom was a tonic. The bonds with my generals, away from the pressures of court, felt different, less like chains of duty, more like threads of shared purpose. But the freedom was an illusion. On the 3rd night, as we made camp in a shallow cave, Silas returned from a perimeter check. His midnight rain scent was edged with frost. "We are being followed." The fire suddenly felt too bright, too revealing. "How many?" Kael asked, his voice low. 5, maybe 6. They are good, very good. They keep to the shadows, just outside bowshot. They are not attacking, they are herding." "Herding us where?" Torin growled, his hand on his axe. "Towards the northeast, the direction we are already heading." Silas's silver eyes met mine. "They know our destination, and they want us to reach it." A trap. The spiders were not just waiting at the grove, they were guiding us to it. The realization changed everything. We could not turn back. The citadel's stability relied on me understanding my power. We could not rush ahead blindly into an ambush. We had to walk into the trap, but on our terms.
Kael's mind shifted into a colder, sharper gear. We use their surveillance. We let them think they are driving us, but we choose the ground. We slow our pace. We make them impatient. Impatience leads to mistakes. So we journeyed on, a tense pantomime of unaware travelers. The bonds between us became a silent communication network. A flicker of feeling from Kael meant a possible ambush point ahead. A spike of alertness from Torin meant he'd caught a distant scent. A wave of calm focus from Silas meant the followers were still there, still holding back. Lena, the scout, was a marvel. She moved like a breeze, leaving false trails, circling back to report on our pursuers without them ever knowing. "They wear no insignia," she whispered an evening. "Their gear is high quality, but worn. Mercenaries, perhaps, but disciplined. And one of them, he doesn't smell quite right, not entirely wolf." The words sent a chill through us. What other powers were interested in a catalyst? The land grew wilder, the mountains steeper. The air grew thinner and carried a strange metallic tang. The trees became gnarled giants, their bark silver white. We were entering a place that felt outside of time. On the 7th night, the feeling of being watched became a pressure, a weight on the back of the neck. We camped in a ring of the silver-barked trees, a natural fortress. No one slept. The bonds were taut wires. Just before dawn, the attack came. It was not from the followers behind us. It was from above. Dark shapes dropped from the canopy, silent as owls. Not wolves. Their forms were sleek, agile, moving with a predator's grace that was subtly wrong. They were clad in close-fitting, matte black leather, their faces obscured by masks that seemed to drink the moonlight. Vespertine, bat-shifters, a reclusive, nocturnal clan rumored to hire out as elite assassins. Their scent was of damp caves and crushed night-blooming flowers. They moved with terrifying coordination, 2 diving for Torin, 2 for Kael, 1 for Silas. The last, and largest, came straight for me. The world erupted into violence. Steel rang against strange hooked blades. Torin's roar of fury shook the trees. Kael fought with chilling, efficient precision. Silas seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, a phantom meeting shadows. The Vespertine leader reached me. Lena and the 2 guards were locked in their own desperate struggles. I had a dagger, Silas's silver one, but I was no warrior. The bat shifter was a whirlwind of motion. A hooked blade swept towards my throat. I didn't think. I reached. Not for a weapon, for the bond. In my terror, I didn't pull on their scent or their strength. I pulled on their senses, on their instinct. The world fragmented into a dizzying rush of perceptions. I saw the Vespertine's blade through Kael's eyes, calculating its trajectory and the 3 weaknesses in the assassin's stance. I felt the explosive power in Torin's muscles as he broke an opponent's arm, the timing perfect for me to duck. I sensed the shift in air pressure from Silas's position, telling me to step left. My body moved without my conscious command. I ducked under the swing, not because I saw it, but because Kael's tactical mind directed me. I sidestepped a grab, guided by Torin's battle-honed reflexes. I thrust my dagger upward, not at where the assassin was, but where Silas's shadow sense told me he would be. The silver blade sank into a gap in the leather armor beneath the assassin's arm. He let out a choked, gurgling cry, more surprise than pain, and fell back. The shared sensation vanished, leaving me gasping, my head ponding as if split, but I was alive. The tide of the fight turned. Seeing their leader fall, the remaining Vespertine disengaged with eerie discipline, melting back into the treetops as swiftly as they came. We were left panting in the sudden silence, the smell of blood and night flowers hanging thick. Torin had a deep gash on his arm. One of the guards was dead. Lena was wounded. Kael knelt by the dead Vespertine leader, pulling off the mask. The face beneath was sharp, pale, with large eyes now staring emptily at the sky. He examined the gear. No marks, no identification. Professional. Silas, wiping his blade, looked northeast towards the rising sun painting the peaks in rose and gold. They were not here to kill us. They were testing us, hurting us with violence instead of stealth.
We are close, and they want us to know they are here. He was right. The ambush was a message, a bloody, brutal welcome. I looked down at my hands, still trembling. I had not used catalyst power. I had used the bond itself as a weapon, weaving my general strengths into a shield and a blade. It was a new aspect of our connection. We buried the guard in the silver grove. As we placed the last stone on the cairn, Lena pointed east. Between two distant, jagged peaks, a faint silver glow pulsed against the dawn sky, like a heartbeat of light from the earth itself. The Grove of Whispers was no longer a myth, it was a beacon, and between us and it, the hunters in the dark were waiting.
The silver glow between the peaks was a siren's call, pulling at something deep in my marrow. The closer we trudged, the heavier the air became, not with pressure, but with a thrumming, silent energy that made the hair on my arms stand on end. The forest here was alive in a way that defied nature. The silver-barked trees hummed, luminescent moss pulsed in time with my own heartbeat. Even the streams seemed to flow with liquid moonlight. The vespertine attack had stripped away any pretense of stealth. We were expected, so we moved openly but carefully, a wounded, weary knot of resolve, heading into the jaws of the unknown. The valley that opened before us at midday stole my breath. It wasn't a grove, it was a cathedral. Towering trees of pure, shimmering silver formed a vast circular clearing. At its center stood a monolithic stone, an altar of obsidian, veined with threads of living, flowing silver light. The air itself shimmered, thick with the scent of ozone, ancient stone, and a wild, sweet power that was the very essence of my honey and jasmine scent, amplified 1,000-fold. The Grove of Whispers, and we were not alone. Arrayed in a semicircle before the altar were a dozen figures, not vespertine. These were wolves, but unlike any I had seen. They wore robes of undyed wool, their faces stern and ageless. At their center stood a tall, severe woman with hair the color of the silver bark and eyes that held the same luminous glow as the veins in the altar. She held a staff of polished moonstone. Behind them, lurking at the tree line, were the shadowy forms of the vespertine assassins, the herders. "Halt," the silver-haired woman commanded, her voice echoing with unnatural resonance in the humming clearing. "You have come far, child of storms, farther than we believed possible." Kael, Torin, and Silas moved instantly, forming their protective triangle around me, weapons ready. Lena and the remaining guard fanned out, arrows nocked. "Who are you?" I demanded, my own voice sounding small against the grove's power. "We are the keepers of the first pact, guardians of this place and of the truth of the catalyst bloodline. I am Lyra." The shared name was no coincidence. It felt like a claim. "You sent the vespertine. You tried to kill us." "We tested you," Lyra corrected, her gaze sweeping over my generals, "to see if the bond was true or a trick of power, to see if you were a weapon to be controlled or a heart to be awakened. Alden was a tool, a blunt instrument to prevent your awakening. He failed. Your power has stirred. It is raw, dangerous, like a storm with no eye." "What do you want?" Torin snarled. "What we have always wanted, to complete the pact. The catalyst was never meant to be a lone queen binding wolves to her will. That was the corruption, the fear that led to the purges. The true catalyst is the heart of the triad, the balance." She gestured to Kael, Torin, and Silas. "The strategist, the guardian, the phantom, the 3 pillars upon which lasting power is built. You found them, or they found you. The bond is the first pact made flesh." Her words resonated with a truth that shook me. The bond had always felt destined, deeper than accident. "The power you used to survive the rejection was a scream. It is wild, unsustainable. It will consume you or make you a tyrant unless you learn to channel it, to ground it. This grove is the wellspring. Here you can complete the awakening, not to gain more power, but to understand it, to tie it to the triad, so it is shared, balanced, controlled. And if we refuse? Kael asked, his voice like ice. Lyra's expression softened, almost sadly. Then the storm inside her will eventually break free. It will shatter her mind, and likely yours with it, and the wild power will spill into the world, unpredictable, attracting other darker things that hunger for such energy. Or, she looked at the Vespertine, we will be forced to contain the threat, as we have done before. It was another ultimatum, but of a different kind, not servitude but acceptance, not becoming a weapon, but becoming whole. I looked at the obsidian altar, at the thrumming silver light. I felt the dormant power inside me stir in response, like calling to like. It was terrifying. It was home. I looked at my generals. Their faces were etched with worry, but also with a steadfast trust. They would follow me into the storm, even if it consumed them. What must I do? I asked Lyra. You must stand at the heart of the grove with your triad. You must open yourself to the memory in the stone, to the truth of the first pact. The power will flow. It will seek to fill you. You must not take it all. You must let it flow through you, to them. You must share the storm. It was a leap of faith into a blinding chasm. We moved forward. The keepers and the Vespertine watched, silent sentinels. At the base of the obsidian altar, I turned to Kael, Torin, and Silas. Words were inadequate. I simply reached out and took their hands. The moment our connected circle was complete, the grove reacted. The humming became a deafening choir. The silver veins in the altar blazed. Beams of liquid moonlight shot from the stone, enveloping us. The world dissolved into light and sensation. I was not me. I was 1,000 memories. I saw the first catalysts not as rulers, but as weavers, standing with their triads, always 3, calming rampant magic, healing rifts in the world, their power a shared burden and joy. I saw the corruption, a catalyst who tried to hoard the power, who saw the bonds as chains to control others. I saw the purges, the fear, the hiding. The raw, screaming power of my survival rushed to the surface, eager to join the torrent. It wanted to fill me, to make me a god. The agony was exquisite. Share the storm. Through the bond, I didn't push my fear. I opened the floodgates of the power itself. I felt it hit Kael. His brilliant, logical mind didn't fight it. He organized it. He gave the wild energy structure, purpose, direction. I felt it hit Torin. His boundless fury didn't combat it. He forged it. He tempered the raw power into unwavering strength, into protective resolve. I felt it hit Silas. His deep silence didn't absorb it. He wove the power into subtlety, into perception, into the spaces between heartbeats. The power that would have shattered me was divided, transformed, and balanced. It flowed in a perfect, stable circuit between the 4 of us. The screaming tempest inside me quieted, not disappearing, but becoming a controlled, immense potential, a shared well of strength. The light faded. We stood, still holding hands, in the suddenly quiet grove. The silver glow was gentler now, a steady pulse. I felt whole, complete. The dormant power was awake, but it was not mine alone. It was ours. Lyra and the keepers were kneeling. The Vespertine had vanished back into the shadows. The first pact is restored, Lyra whispered, reverence in her voice. The heart and the pillars. The kingdom you are building is not a new thing. It is the echo of an ancient truth. I looked at Kael, Torin, and Silas. Their eyes glowed with a soft, shared silver light. The bonds between us were no longer just threads of loyalty or magic. They were foundational, the load-bearing walls of a new world. We came seeking answers to my power. We found the truth of our bond. We were not a queen and her generals. We were a catalyst and her triad, the heart of the storm and the pillars that let it rage without destroying the world. As we walked out of the grove, the weight of the crown was still there, the threats from the outside world still loomed, but the fear was gone. We were no longer just surviving or ruling. We were fulfilling a destiny written in silver light long before any of us were born. And we would face whatever came next, not as individuals, but as one unbreakable, ancient, and newly forged power. The runt was gone, the queen remained, and now the true storm had finally awakened.